Before Hollywood sold you juicy steaks and whiskey nights, real cowboys were eating rock-hard biscuits filled with bugs. No refrigeration, no fresh food, just survival meals that could last months. After 12 brutal hours on horseback, they didn't eat for pleasure. They ate to stay alive. So what was really cooking in those dusty chuck wagons? Let's uncover the truth. Hardtack was the backbone of survival food. Flour, water, and salt mixed into a dense dough and baked until it was nearly rock solid. No yeast, no fluff, no softness, just durability. It could last for months in a canvas sack without spoiling, which made it perfect for long cattle drives that stretched across the American West in the late 1800s. But eating it was another story. Hardtack was so hard it could crack teeth if bitten directly. Cowboys often soaked it in black coffee or bacon grease to soften it. Sometimes they crumbled it into beans or stew just to make it chewable. And yes, sometimes it had bugs. Weevils could get into flour barrels. Cowboys would tap the biscuit against the wagon wheel to knock insects loose, shrug, and eat it anyway. Protein was protein. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't tasty. But after riding all day through dust and heat, even a softened piece of hardtack felt like relief. Hardtack wasn't about pleasure. It was about endurance. It symbolized what trail life truly was: tough, repetitive, and built for survival. Salt pork was the true energy source of the trail. Thick slabs of pork preserved in heavy salt could survive weeks in the heat without refrigeration. It didn't taste fresh. It tasted salty, intense, and sometimes borderline harsh. But it was fat, and fat meant calories. The chuck wagon cook would slice off pieces and fry them in a cast iron skillet over open fire. The smell of sizzling pork fat drifting across camp was often the best part of the day. Nothing went to waste. The leftover grease became liquid gold. It flavored beans, coated biscuits, and formed the base for gravy. That grease stretched meals and added flavor to otherwise bland staples. For men burning thousands of calories daily riding horseback, salt pork wasn't optional. It was necessary. It wasn't lean. It wasn't healthy by modern standards. But it kept cowboys strong enough to push cattle hundreds of miles north. In the movies, you see thick steaks on open flames. In reality, you saw salted pork frying before sunrise. It was greasy. It was repetitive. But after a cold night under the stars, the smell alone could lift morale. Salt pork wasn't luxury. It was survival disguised as breakfast. If there was one food that defined cowboy life, it was beans. Dried pinto beans traveled well in sacks and could be soaked overnight in water barrels. Each morning before dawn, the cook, often called cookie, would start boiling them in a large pot. By evening, they were thick, soft, and ready. Beans were cheap. They were filling, and when cooked with salt pork, they absorbed smoky, salty flavor. Cowboys ate beans almost every day. Breakfast, dinner, sometimes both. The repetition became a running joke on the trail. Beans were expected. Beans were reliable. Beans were inevitable. But when you've been riding 12 hours under a relentless sun, even a simple bowl of beans feels earned. They provided protein, fiber, and slow energy, exactly what long days required. There were no side dishes, no garnish, no variety. Just a tin plate, a ladle of beans, and maybe a biscuit on the side. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't Instagram-worthy. But it kept cattle moving and men upright in the saddle. Beans weren't a symbol of poverty. They were a symbol of practicality. Cowboys didn't just drink coffee. They depended on it. Black, strong, and often gritty from grounds left in the pot, coffee was served at nearly every meal. The chuck wagon cook kept it boiling almost constantly. It wasn't about taste. It was about function. Coffee woke them before sunrise, kept them alert during long cattle drives, and gave them a moment of comfort after exhausting days. Some cowboys even drank it with meals instead of water. If beans fed the body, coffee kept the mind going. Sometimes it was reheated over and over, growing thicker and harsher each time. Still, no one complained, because on the trail, hot coffee meant warmth, routine, and a rare sense of normal life. Forget soft bakery bread. This was survival baking. Biscuits were made from simple ingredients: flour, baking powder, or sometimes none, water, and occasionally lard. The dough was shaped quickly and baked in cast iron ovens over open fire. They came out dense, sometimes dry, but filling. Cowboys used biscuits as a base for everything, soaking up bacon grease, pairing with beans, or dunking into coffee to soften them. They weren't fluffy. They weren't fancy, but they were reliable. Cooks often made them in large batches before sunrise, stacking them in cloth-lined containers. By evening, they turned tough and crumbly, but hunger didn't care, and neither did the men eating them. Fresh fruit was almost impossible on the trail, so cowboys relied on dried apples, peaches, or raisins when available. These were lightweight, lasted long, and added a bit of sweetness to an otherwise salty, repetitive diet. Sometimes they were eaten alone. Other times, they were turned into simple desserts like dried fruit stews. It wasn't common, but when it showed up, it broke the monotony. These small portions were often rationed carefully, saved for longer drives or tougher days. Even a handful could lift morale, offering a brief reminder of home and meals beyond the dusty trail. Some chuck wagon cooks carried a sourdough starter, a living culture used to make better bread. It was carefully maintained and reused daily, making biscuits and bread slightly lighter and more flavorful than basic dough. This wasn't luxury, it was ingenuity. A good cook with a strong starter could turn basic ingredients into something almost enjoyable. The starter had to be protected from extreme heat and cold, sometimes carried close to the cook at night. Losing it meant starting over, something no experienced cook ever wanted to risk. When we picture cowboys, we imagine roaring fires, thick steaks, and heroic feasts under the stars. The reality was simpler. Hardtack softened in coffee, salt pork sizzling in reused grease, beans simmering in iron pots, strong coffee poured into dented tin cups. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't varied, but it worked. Cowboy food wasn't designed for pleasure, it was built for endurance. Every ingredient had a purpose. Every meal was fuel for another long day on the trail. And maybe that's what makes it fascinating. In a world before refrigeration, before highways, before fast food, these meals kept the American cattle industry moving and shaped the mythology of the West. Sometimes, history isn't about what looks dramatic on screen. It's about what kept people alive. If you enjoy stepping beyond Hollywood and discovering what life was really like in the past, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We explore the forgotten details of American history, the food, the culture, the everyday realities that movies rarely show. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you on the next journey back in time.